Welcome to the Deep Dive. So today we're diving into a topic that's kind of shaking things up globally, the future of work, and specifically how remote work is changing the game. You guys send in a ton of interesting articles and research on this, so we're going to unpack it all. Like, what are the big trends? What are the potential opportunities? And let's be real, what are some of the challenges we're facing in this new world of work?
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that this whole remote work thing, it's not just a Silicon Valley trend anymore, right? We're seeing changes everywhere. It's global.
It's true. It's way beyond just working from your couch now. One stat from the reports you sent that really blew my mind, in the U.S., remote work went from like, what, 5–6% of the workforce to almost 25% for jobs that are doable remotely, and that's after the initial pandemic shift, right?
Yeah.
So is this a temporary thing, or is this like the new normal?
All the signs point to this being a lasting change. Even those countries that have always been super office-centric, like think Germany, the Netherlands, even Japan and South Korea, they're all seeing an increase in remote work. The pace is different everywhere, but it's happening.
Okay, wow. So this really impacts everyone then. I mean, it changes how we think about our careers, where we want to live, the whole nine yards. But let's get into the details a bit. What about productivity? I mean, there's been so much back and forth about if people actually get work done when they're remote. Some studies you sent showed a big productivity boost. Others were all about how hard it is to manage remote teams. So what's the truth?
It's tricky. There are a lot of factors. That Stanford study you mentioned, the one that found a 13% productivity and increase with remote workers, that shows us what's possible. Fewer distractions, more control of your schedule, that kind of thing. But it's not that simple for every job or every person.
Yeah, makes sense. Like, I can imagine it's easy to be a chef remotely, or if you're working in retail. Those industries rely so much on people actually being there face to face.
Yeah.
It's got to be totally different from, say, software development.
You got it. And that's where adapting your management style for a remote or hybrid setup is so important, but we can circle back to that a bit later.
Definitely a big one to unpack. Okay, but let's talk about something that I know worries a lot of people: money. Specifically, do you take a pay cut if you go remote? There's been a lot of chatter about these location-based salaries, especially in the U.S.
Yeah, it's a legitimate concern. We are seeing this trend for sure, especially in the U.S., where companies factor in the cost of living when they're figuring out salaries. So someone in, say, a smaller city with a lower cost of living, they might be offered less than someone doing the same job in New York or San Francisco.
So where you live could be a bargaining chip.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's this global salary scale depending on where your desk is, even if your desk is your kitchen table.
Exactly. And this isn't limited to the U.S. anymore either. Multinational companies, those with teams in India, Brazil, you name it, they're starting to do the same thing as they hire more remote workers.
Wow, so it really is a global shift then. And it impacts both the companies and the people trying to figure out this new way of working. But it's not all doom and gloom salary-wise, though, right? I mean, some industries are actually doing incredibly well because of this remote work.
Absolutely. If you look at tech, finance, professional services, those industries are full of people who can, for the most part, work from anywhere. Knowledge workers, they call them. And those sectors are booming.
And we're talking big names, too. Google, Microsoft, JP Morgan, they're all going remote or hybrid. It's almost like they're setting the example for everyone else. But this goes way beyond just Silicon Valley, right?
Totally. Think about places like India or Eastern Europe. They've got these huge, talented workforces, and they're often able to work for less than in other parts of the world. That's a big draw for companies. And for investors, well, this whole shift means big opportunities.
Let's talk about that. I mean, the growth of some of these companies, Zoom, Slack, Microsoft Teams, it's been wild. They've become such household names practically overnight.
Yeah, and they're just one piece of the puzzle. In 2023 alone, something like $25 billion was invested globally in technologies specifically designed for remote work. And it's not just those collaboration tools. Think about cybersecurity. With everyone working from everywhere, keeping things secure is a huge deal. Companies like CrowdStrike are killing it right now because they're on the front lines of protecting all these remote workforces.
So every challenge with this whole remote work thing seems to create a new opportunity for someone, huh?
You got it. But speaking of challenges, managing a team that's entirely remote, that comes with a whole new set of hurdles that a lot of companies are still trying to figure out.
It's easy to say, yeah, let's be flexible, work from anywhere. But actually making it work so everyone's on the same page, getting things done, that's the tricky part, right?
Yeah, it really is. And I think one of the biggest things companies, especially here in the U.S., are bumping up against is communication, or Well, miscommunication, I guess. When you don't have that in-person, day-to-day interaction, it's so easy for things to get misinterpreted, you know?
Totally. Like trying to read someone's tone
Right.
through email or even on a video call, it's not the same.
It's a whole different skill set. And then you've got the accountability piece. When you're not physically seeing your team every day, it's harder to keep tabs on everything and make sure everyone's, actually doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about that whole team spirit thing? It's got to be tough to build relationships and feel connected when everyone is remote.
That's a big one. Building a strong team culture, that sense of camaraderie, it can be really challenging when most of your interactions are virtual.
So it's almost like remote work takes all the normal challenges of managing a team and turns the volume up to 11.
That's a great way to put it. And it gets even more complex when you look at places like Japan or South Korea with their strong workplace cultures, being present in the office, showing respect for seniority. Those things are deeply ingrained there. So this whole remote thing is a huge adjustment.
You mentioned some research on how those countries are adapting, right?
Yeah.
What's the approach?
So they're actually putting a lot of emphasis on retraining managers for this new world of remote work. They're realizing that the old ways of leading, they might not work so well virtually. So they're investing in training that focuses on things like super clear communication, building trust remotely, and managing based on outcomes, not just hours clocked in.
So it's changing not just where we work,
Hmm.
but how we manage and lead too. Fascinating.
Exactly. And this need to adapt, it's creating this whole new market for companies that can help. Think new communication tools, more effective virtual training, even helping businesses rethink their whole approach to work from the ground up. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Definitely. So we've talked about the challenges, but let's step back for a second. Remote work is shaking things up now, no question. But what about the future? Is this the new normal, or are we all going to be called back to the office eventually? What do you think?
Honestly, all signs point to this being a lasting shift. Experts are predicting that even after, the pandemic is a distant memory, something like 25–30% of the U.S. workforce will still be working remotely or in these hybrid setups. And it's not just the U.S., this is a global trend.
Sounds like the genie's out of the bottle.
Hmm.
So if this is the new reality, what does it mean for the average person? How do we navigate this?
It means we have to start thinking differently about work. The old rules don't apply as much. You're not limited by location anymore, which is huge. I mean, imagine building a career where you could work for companies across the country or even the world, all from, well, wherever you want to be. That's the potential here. But it takes being adaptable.
Adaptability. That seems to be the key word here.
It really is. Whether you're the company trying to manage a remote team or the person trying to figure out how to thrive in this new world of work, being able to adapt, to be open to learning new skills, to embrace new ways of thinking, that's what's going to set people and businesses apart in this new era.
So to sum it up, we've seen how remote work is changing everything, from where we work to how we're managed and even how much we get paid. And while there are some serious challenges, there are some really exciting opportunities too.
100%. And that brings us to something I think is worth thinking about. As this whole remote work thing continues to break down those geographic barriers, how can you use that to your advantage? What kind of career could you build for yourself in a world where location matters less and less? It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, it's wild when you really think about how much things have changed work-wise in just a few years. I mean, the research we look at today, it paints a pretty clear picture. Remote work is here to stay, and it's not even just about where we work anymore, right? It's changing how we work, who we work for, even what we look for in a career now.
It really is a whole different way of thinking about work, and like with any big change in how society does things, you're going to have some bumps in the road, but also a lot of exciting new possibilities.
Exactly. The companies that figure out how to manage remotely, how to build a strong team, even when everyone's all over the place, and those that use technology in a smart way, those are the ones that are going to thrive in this new world.
And for individual people, it's all about being flexible, being willing to keep learning new stuff, and being a really proactive communicator. Those are the skills that are going to make you stand out in this new working world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have to say I'm feeling a mix of excitement and kind of blown away by it. All the possibilities really do feel endless.
They do, and that's what makes this whole thing so cool, right? This isn't just about being able to work in your pajamas. It's about rethinking what work even is,
Yeah.
It's about making work more flexible, more inclusive for everyone, and ultimately I think it's about making work more fulfilling.
It's been an amazing conversation. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future of work.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're walking away with some things to think about, a new way of looking at all of this, and maybe even some ideas about how you can build your own dream career in this ever-changing world.